Welcome back to another week in Fairbanks, Alaska, where I, Nic Williams, am going to tell you all about what to expect when you come to Alaska. And the topic of today's video is what kind of homes do we have here? So I'm breaking down the homes into a couple different categories to explain to you what to expect when purchasing a home in the last frontier. So here we go. First off, the one that we hear the most about, but probably sell the least of, is dry cabins. It is a very Alaskan thing. Let's leave it at that. A dry cabin is a standardized hunting cabin that you would see around anywhere in the lower 48. Only difference is people live there full time here. So a dry cabin by definition is dry, meaning no plumbing. So sinks, toilets, that kind of stuff, you will not find them in these homes. This is really the affordable living method here in Alaska. Those off-grid kind of homestead properties, or your cheap affordable living if you are a college student. So things that you need to be aware of with dry cabins. Well, first off, there's no plumbing. You do have electricity, you will have heat. It's nothing that crazy, but they're usually made out of log, sometimes more of a shed type construction with T111 siding and some insulation in it. Overall, you will have an outhouse outside. So when you do have to use the bathroom, you're gonna have to go out to that outhouse and utilize it, even when it's negative 30, negative 40 degrees in the winter. Now, here are some tips with dry cabins before we dig into price and availability and all that stuff. First off, put styrofoam on your outhouse toilet seat in the winter so that you are somewhat comfortable. Secondly, have a good oversized pair of boots that you can slip on and off very easily when you need to run outside to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. Third off, it's a little bit easier for men than women living in these dry cabins just for straight up hygiene reasons. And lastly, make the cabin as cozy as possible because the square footage is usually pretty small. So think more towards tiny home living, even though our average dry cabin is about 700 to about 1,000 square feet. Now, let's dig into price, costs, and some of the upsides and downsides of dry cabins. First off, the main benefit is how much cheaper these things are. So the average price is about $85,000 up to about $150,000. The main discrimination is how new is it, what location is it in, and how much land you get with your dry cabin. We have sold 10-acre dry cabins and we've sold quarter-acre dry cabins. It really just depends on where you're at. Now, the downside is the loan. Most dry cabin loans have to be done by legitimate banks here in town because it is such a unique product. So it's not really a mortgage product, it's more of a loan product. And so Denali State Bank, Mount McKinley, they do 10-year loans with 20% down. So even though the cabin itself is cheaper than a house, purchasing it involves usually a little bit more money and a higher payment than some of your other homes, but you can pay it off a lot quicker, save a lot on interest payments, and hopefully own that property in less than 10 years. Now, if you do want a 30-year mortgage and you're trying to look long-term on a project like this, Team Lend Pro, amazing people over there, they do have a 30-year dry cabin loan. We don't utilize it a lot because, again, we don't have so many of these properties on the market, but that is probably your best option to stretch that out over the years. Now, that usually still comes with 20% down payment, so keep that in mind. Your barrier of entry is higher with these loan products because it's a less unique, more unique property, less kind of standardized home. Number two is your standard in-town home. Now, these can range from ranches to split bi-levels. In Fairbanks, on average, they're gonna be built in the 70s during the pipeline era, usually 2x4 construction. Maybe updated a time or two, but really what they're updating is paint and carpet. So it's still gonna have a little bit older of a vibe, a little bit older of a floor plan, but maybe some newer appliances, newer carpet, and newer paint on the walls. These are perfectly great homes. These are what I like to call the perfect starter home because they're affordable. There is some maintenance and upkeep required on some of these properties, but the price ranges anywhere from $125,000 for some of these older in-town properties, all the way up to about $350,000 for a 2-3 bedroom home with maybe a garage attached or something like that inside of city limits. Now, these are great homes, but they're not our best homes. These are a combination of having all the amenities that a dry cabin lacks, but not having the price tag of a new construction home or some of the out-of-town amenities like a well and septic system, which makes life a little bit easier because it's less things that are expensive that can go bad over time. Things you want to consider on these are basements. Are they waterproof? Have they flooded in the past? I'll tell you, everything here in town flooded in 1968, 69 when we had our massive flood. thanks to flood projects down in North Pole, we'll probably never experience something like that again until Noah's Ark 2.0 comes around, and then I think we're all going to be underwater. Moving along with this and staying on topic here, one of the great things about these in-town homes is your proximity to shopping, entertainment, nightclubs. It's easy to get an Uber or a taxi cab to pick you from the airport and take you home. And it's all going to be cheaper and more affordable. Less gas, less vehicle maintenance, and that kind of stuff throughout your property. Now, the downside of these properties are usually, because we built so many of them in the 70s, they're 2x4 construction. So over the years, if you can find one that's been furred out, meaning they've added about 2 inches of rigid foam to the exterior of the building, you're gonna have amazing savings on your heating bills and maybe even your electrical bill. But all these utilities are gonna be standardized. Some of them are gonna be on natural gas. Most of them are still gonna be on oil tanks because that's just how we primarily heat our home here in Alaska. So that's quite criteria number 2, is your kind of standardized starter homes, a little bit older in age. But these range, like I said, from prices pretty dramatically from super cheap to pretty much right on point for what we call our average home. And in Fairbanks, that is our average home. Built in the late 70s, 3 to 4 bedrooms, split bi-level is the most common floor plan that we have. So you walk in the front door and then you go into a basement and upstairs to the living area. And most of these will have garages. Overall, a garage is not required here in Alaska. You can get by just fine without one, but it's nice to have a nice warm garage that your car's sitting in, melting off all your snow, so that when you leave for work, you're not freezing for the first 10 minutes of your drive. That being said, if you don't have a garage, let's do another video where we talk about winterizing your vehicle and the need to plug it in. I'm going to do another video too talking about the cost differential between plugging in your vehicle and electricity cost, and then having a garage, which is going to lower your electrical cost, but is going to increase your heating cost because now you have to heat that additional square footage. Moving on to our next category, this really kind of shifts us more towards North Pole. These houses were built in the 80s and 90s. They're a little bit newer. We got a bunch of these in the Fairbanks Hills as well, as we're kind of growing the area. But this is kind of like our starter home plus, or what I would like to call our standardized homes. Now, these all have floor plans that consist of ranches, split bi-levels, sometimes tri-levels, meaning basement, mid-floor, and then top floor, not 3-story buildings. These all are very similar to the ones we just talked about, but they're a little bit newer, a little bit better features in them, like HRV systems, or at least a passive air circulation system, relatively newer boilers, and items like that, newer updated kitchens. And these houses usually have been remodeled or updated once or twice in their history. So they're newer. Even though they were built in the 80s, they'll probably feel like a late 90s house, early 2000s home because of the military that we have here rotating through these homes. And over time, people update these homes to get a better equity position when it's time to sell. These homes are great. Now, they're all going to be on oil. Most of them are going to be on a sewer and a septic line because they're out of town. But, and most of them are going to have a well as well. In order to get you some free water, which deletes an entire utility for you, but there's a little bit of upkeep that comes with wells, such as water softeners and keeping those fed with salt. Now, these homes are probably our most popular. These are the ones that people come to Alaska to look for because you're going to get about 1 acre or 5 of land. You're still going to have internet and cell phone service, maybe not as good as in the city, but now with Starlink and other technologies, they were quickly closing that gap in just the last 2 years. Overall, the things to look out for these houses are going to be the age of the roofs, because they're coming about due here in the last 5-10 years or so, and if they haven't been replaced yet, some of these original roofs are going to be expired. And I'm talking about shingles, not really trusses or anything like that. Next up is going to be septic lines. Septics can last up to 50 years, or they can fail in 2 or 3 years. It has a lot more to do with soil conditions and things like that. You wear and tear, what you're flushing down the toilet, if you have a garbage disposal or not. So if you're on a septic, please baby that thing, because they can easily range anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 depending on what type of septic is needed for your home. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to septics, they go off of bedrooms, not bathrooms, because they really care more about the amount of occupants in the home than how many flushing toilets that you have. So you're going to have a little bit more of a rural lifestyle in these properties, even though everything's going to be within a 15 to 20 minute commute back into town, whether you're in North Pole or Fairbanks. Everything's going to be a couple miles off of a highway or an expressway. So don't think that we're in Timbuktu here. Every house that I sell within Fairbanks since my office is right in the middle of town, is a 30-minute or less commute from my office. And my office is only 2 minutes away from the hospital, shopping, entertainment, all that stuff. So 30-minute maximum drive, and the only roads that are gonna be less maintained, even though they're still plowed, are gonna be those residential neighborhoods, maybe in the hills. But I can drive around all winter long and I have no problem getting in and out of these subdivisions. You're gonna get more privacy, like I said, about an acre, but you're not gonna be completely private. You're gonna see a house through the woods, but you're not gonna be able to stare in their windows like you do in a suburban neighborhood, which we also have a few of those, and that's gonna get into the next one or two categories that we have. So again, these are newer homes, 3 to 4 bedrooms, sometimes more, sometimes less, but ranging anywhere from that 325 to about 425 range because of the size and age of these properties. Next category we want to talk about is going to be your newer construction, all the way up to new construction and luxury homes. And these are pretty rare. They don't come up for sale often. Most of these are custom homes that people have built to live in their entire life. They're forever homes, and we do have them sell from time to time, and most of these properties are also going to be out in the hills. So this is Chena Ridge on the west side of town and Farmers Loop on the north side of town, and you'll see these houses from far away. They're pretty cool. They usually have great views of the Alaska range, and that's why we call them our luxury properties. Now these usually range from $450,000 up to about $1 million, depending on location, size, amenities, and so on. These properties will most likely have a garage, 2 or 3 car. These will have multiple bathrooms, multiple floors, will have a larger lot size starting around an acre. You're gonna have multiple floors, higher end appliances, a lot more open space, open concept. You're still gonna be on a well and septic, just like we talked about. However, you're going to have that high-end finish work that is really gonna make your house shine. These are the ones that are desirable for Airbnb properties. These properties are for those people a little bit further along in life that have saved up some money and are able to afford a mortgage that corresponds to these price ranges. And overall, they are the houses that we love to sell the most, but we have the least opportunity to sell because, again, they sell quickly and they're in high demand, even though we're low on those inventories. Other than that, you're gonna have a shingled roof, you're gonna have connectivity as far as internet, cell phone service, you're going to have an oil boiler about 99% of the time. Saunas, wood stoves, some sort of yard feature, and minor curb appeal. But keep in mind, we're in Alaska, everything's covered in snow about 6 months out of the year, so curb appeal is probably one of the least most important thing when selling your house here. As long as your house is clean and desirable, it usually sells pretty quickly around these parts. Moving on to our last category, it's kind of our niche category, it's our catch-all. So if I missed anything, we're talking about multifamily properties. We're talking about duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. Those are mostly gonna be in town, but we also have those out of town options. You're also gonna be talking about your cabin farms, which is a bunch of dry cabins that you can buy in a package. Those make great Airbnbs, long-term rentals, and a good home with some income generating if you wanna live in one and rent out the rest. We have a few of those options for sale right now, actually. Overall, you get to pick what kind of homes you're interested in, and we have a shoe that fits almost any need. The main thing I want to do to manage your expectations is know that we are building very few new homes here, so when they come up on the market, they usually sell pretty quickly for people looking at that time of year. If you're looking to buy a home with as little competition as possible, you should try to buy between the months of November and April, because that's when we have the least amount of inventory. Most of the locals are not looking at moving out of their houses, and the houses that are for sale are super motivated to accept an offer. Now, if you're willing to put up with a little bit of competition, meaning you might pay more than asking price, depending on the house you pick and the time of year that you're buying, April through November is our sale season. It's our busy season, if you will. And that's mostly because we have a lot of military PCSing up here, and the locals are willing to move because the snow is gone and it's easier to get your stuff out of your house and into a new home. So in the summer, you will see more inventory. You will see better home options, in my personal opinion. And the whole process kind of moves a little bit quicker because houses are selling at a rapid rate, which means you're gonna have multiple offer situations. If you want tips and tricks on how to win a multiple offer situation, go ahead and shoot me a message, call my phone, or send me an email, and I'll give you my strategy on how I help my clients win multiple offer situations with as little money down as possible. That being said, when it comes to buying a house, especially in a competitive situation, the one thing you got to remember is the sellers are trying to make a profit. So the person with the highest offer is probably going to win. So there's more that goes into an offer, especially in a competitive situation, on how to win that offer than just what purchase price you're offering. Your loan type matters, your realtor matters, your home inspector matters. Everything that we build into your offer does matter, and there's a rhyme and reason why we do what we do. So again, if you want those tips, contact me as soon as possible, and I'll set up a call or an email with you explaining what you should do to get ready for a competitive summer here in 2025, which we do expect to be a better year in real estate than the last 2 years due to the interest rates slowly dropping, inventory being on the rise, and pent-up demand in the market from the last 2 years that needs to be expressed. So it's going to be a good year this year. If you're looking at buying a house, feel free to contact me anytime, and we will get the show on the road for you, find you the perfect Alaskan home that meets your needs. Have a great day. Thanks for watching, and please hit that subscribe button. I'm new to this, and every one of you guys who pushes that button helps me just kind of keep doing this a little bit longer. I don't make money off of YouTube. I make money off of selling houses and helping people like you who pay attention to my 15-minute videos about Fairbanks. So thank you for everybody who watches this. I'm so grateful you guys are just hanging around with me and asking questions.